just want to do God's will.
What you're seeking is a blessing from God.
You must expect a miracle.
You have the power of choice.
Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ.
Welcome to Life Today Live. I'm Randy Robinson, and here on this Friday, we're going to talk about a topic that I don't cover a whole lot because, well, I'm an old married man myself, 31 years now. Thank you very much. Congratulate my wife, not me. We're going to talk about the dating because this is important, and I have 4 children. All of them are married now, and we walked through this, and, you know, I think children suck the memory and sometimes the brain cells out of you, because by the time my children were dating, I felt like I'd forgotten everything about dating that I needed to know to help them. And so and things change. Times change. My goodness, attitudes have changed shockingly fast in the last 30 years, in my opinion. But so I don't really feel qualified to sit here and really have a constructive conversation with you in the audience about dating. And so I went and got an expert. So we're going to talk about it, and it's going to be helpful. And frankly, if you didn't, get things right on the front end, and now you're working through things and you're married, this will help you too, because it's about the qualities that make us compatible, and not just compatible, but enjoyable in a relationship. And so my guest today is Lisa Anderson. She is the author of this book right here called The Dating Manifesto. And we're talking about not just finding someone you can live with, but finding someone you can pursue a marriage with purpose, as the subtitle says, which is important. Even if you've already tied the knot and you're married, a marriage with a purpose it's an ongoing thing. You got to work on it your whole life, I think. She's the director of Young Adults at Focus on the Family, and she is the host of The Boundless Show. So if you want to follow up with her, write that one down, The Boundless Show. We'll give you more information later. Lisa, great to have you on Life Today Live. Appreciate you being here.
Awesome. It is so great to be here, Randy. I'm looking forward to this.
All right. So help us men who forget things overnight and who may be a little past the times. Where are we in this whole kind of dating thing in the culture and even in the church?
Yeah, it's funny because you were alluding to married people, and probably one of the most common comments I get from those who are married when they hear about what we talk about at Boundless is, oh my goodness, thank goodness I'm married. If I had to date again, I don't even know what I would do. Because it's a different world. I mean, in addition to us being so transient, you throw in the digital component, and it makes a lot of young daters freeze up with anxiety. The thought of paralysis of how do I find the right person? What does it look like to actually ask someone out in a culture that's extremely passive? How do I even know if a person is who they say they are? And so I think there's a lot of confusion out there in dating. And I think that, it would be so awesome if we could just open the Bible and turn to first and second dating. But I have tried, Randy, and it is not there. And so instead, we have to actually look into the Bible for biblical principles of relationships and honoring one another, and kind of start there and then move on to particulars as we move forward.
Well, let's get right into some of the particulars. And I think these are things that most people in the church, especially older guys like me, we kind of know. But transmitting this to the younger generation sometimes, honestly, there's a song, Old Crow Medicine Show. I wish I knew what I know now when I was younger, because it's just, there's this maturity and experience and wisdom. I don't know. What are the things that maybe some people are struggling with right now in the younger dating years?
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges is there are so many compatibility tests out there. And I mean, I've talked to people who start dating someone and immediately they have 7 assessments for their boyfriend or girlfriend to take. And it's like, whoa, are you applying for the FBI or what's going on here? So it becomes really intimidating. And so, but also just to get wisdom and to get objective eyes on the process as well. And so the first thing I encourage, even really before anyone wants to seriously start dating, is to gather a dating team. And this seems so weird because we're so individualistic, and you'll talk to any 20 something and they're like, help me find a job, help me figure out, some personal growth stuff, but do not mess with my love life. Okay. But that's exactly what they need. And so these are, a few people that you need to gather around you. And I'm not saying this isn't like open yourself to the whole world. This is, who are those trusted people who have their heads on straight, who love God, who love and know you, and can kind of help you in this process. Because, and I'm going to tell on myself here, Randy, I am super logical. Like on the Myers-Briggs, my T is off the charts. I'm a thinker. I assumed that when I started dating, I was going to be super rational, but no, all of a sudden I get into a guy and I lose my mind. Okay. I have no objectivity. I think he's super great, despite the fact that maybe he doesn't have a job. Maybe he doesn't, let's not even go into the aspects there. It's very embarrassing. But anyway, you have to have people that are like, okay, we're going to raise some red flags here on your behalf, because you might be trying to shut people out. You might be making excuses for a person. And so they're going to help you look for great prospects. First of all, I mean, we have lost that in our culture, even in the church. There are some folks like the Jewish and the Indian cultures that still preserve this in some sense, but bringing your friends and family around you, because who better to help you find a great match than the people who know and love you best? So bring those people in, a few folks. And then as you start dating, you're going to invite them into getting to know this person, into being part of your story, into maybe helping you identify some things that need to be talked through. And so that's kind of the first thing that has to be done. And I would say in tandem with that, the next best thing is, we talk about like crazy lists. Like people will write down, I had a very precious youth group leader in junior high who gathered all of us kids and said, write down the 50 things you want in your future spouse.
Oh, geez. Okay,
well, I was an overachiever. So I got right to it. And my first 4 or 5 were very legit, loves God, is a solid person, has character. But by 45 through 50, I was talking about like plays guitar, likes to hike, just random stuff.
Walks upright.
Hair color. Walks upright, height, whatever, all these things. Right. And it's like, what I say is you need to have a list, but it needs to be about 4 or 5 things. And they is a person who is a disciple of Jesus Christ. So this does not mean that they tweet a few pastors, retweet their stuff. This doesn't mean that they were born in Texas and think that they're a Christian because they're an American. This means that they actually are pursuing God in every area of their life. So that's the first thing. Second, they need to be in a position to marry. They have to be a person who is actually a grown-up, because grown-ups marry grown-ups. So, does this person have a job? Are they working on areas of their life that need work? Are they cleaning up things from their past that need to be let go of? And so, those are kind of the first 2 things. I would also say they have to be a person who is humble and teachable. You get someone who's humble and teachable, you're going to get a lot of other things rolled out for you as well. And then finally, are they kind of headed in the same direction as you? This doesn't mean that you're going to tag team and have some power ministry or some crazy, not everyone can have a TV show and serve in that way. But are they kind of like, do they have a similar calling? Do they have some similar goals? Then you can build a life together.
Oh, okay. I have so many questions because your list is not what my list really was. I might have written those things down first when I was dating, but let's be honest. And it would not be the same as I think most girls that I was dating. Because, I mean, if we're honest, a guy's list is like, is she pretty?
Yeah.
Is she taller than me? Because that's a deal breaker, for most guys. These very surface level things. Excuse me. Do you still see a pretty significant difference in the way guys and girls generally approach dating?
In some ways, like I would say women, and of course this frustrates women to no end because they will stereotype and say that every man out there, even the Christian ones, are so shallow and all they care about are looks and they're never going to give anyone else a chance. But I know quality guys who do. And I'm not saying, I'm glad you brought that up, Randy, because I'm not saying that attraction is not important. It's very important. What I'm saying is if you're going to ask someone out for lunch or for coffee, have those basic things that I mentioned in place, because then you can build on that and you can find out, okay, but am I actually attracted to this person? Right. What guys don't want to do is get into this rut of, I'm only dating supermodels. And then I really hope she also writes and leads Bible studies. Okay. Because that there you're looking for a unicorn and you will most likely remain single. So, it's like get the basics in place and then trust God to do the rest. And so I think in today's culture, we have to build this relationship in our heads and assume maybe I could marry this person before we'll even do coffee with them. And the whole purpose of dating is to explore whether or not there is long-term potential there. And so be chill about it, see where it goes. Get the basics in place, and then you have a chance at finding success.
Yeah. My wife doesn't actually lead Bible studies. It's really not her personality, but she is a supermodel. So, I did okay there. It'll be a good weekend. Here's, you mentioned that adults marry adults. Mm-hmm. I was 21 when I got married. I can assure you that I was not. I was still in a lot of ways a kid. My youngest just got married last year, and they were young as well. Even though that age is kind of creeping up nowadays, it seems like kids are getting married later. Whereas my parents' generation, they get married at 18. Grandparents, it seems like they were married at 12 or something. It's just kind of weird. Mm-hmm. Is there a right age to marry and a wrong age to marry?
So, yes and no. So I would say statistically, we are seeing, and there are many studies that have been done around this, that marrying in your teens tends to have worse outcomes than marrying later in life. That said, the other end of that spectrum, marrying later, also has worse outcomes. So you think of, teenagers, their brains aren't fully developed, they're clearly not mature, they may be making some wrong decisions, some selfish decisions, but then older folks tend to be more set in their ways, they tend to be bringing a lot more baggage into a relationship. Really that the sweet spot statistically is the young to mid 20s, because you are at that point moving, in a good direction, but at the same time, you're still willing to grow with another person and you have a chance to chart together a life that you can script out and trust God with and move in the same direction, hopefully together. So that's a good point because, Randy, a lot of people, a lot of daters, women especially, will look at all the outliers in our culture today, specifically our Christian culture. So all the super pastors, all the authors and theologians, and they will say, well, I need to marry that guy. I have actually had women say to me, I plan to marry Billy Graham, or I plan to marry, fill in the blank. It's going to be John Piper. It's going to be whoever. And I'm like, well, first of all, one of those guys is with the Lord. One is already married. So you're going to have to look elsewhere. So as we do that, though, I say, look not for a finished product, but look for trajectory. And both men and women have to do this. So you're not marrying someone, none of these guys, none of the great men of God were who they are when they were 21. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's growth in there and marriage helps with that crucible of growth. But you want to find someone who has their head on straight, who is pursuing God in many different avenues of their life, who knows what it means to commit and to sacrifice and is willing to go after that and do the hard things that are necessary for a relationship. Then you can start having that conversation.
All right, I got a couple of questions. One related to the fact that we do change over time, and another related to people who are dating older in life. But first, I want to show people your book again. This is the Dating Manifesto by Lisa Anderson, available wherever you get your books these days. And if you got someone in your life that is headed towards this or in the middle of this, definitely be a very helpful resource to put into their hands to get them thinking about these things, because let's face it, especially if they're younger, we don't, thinking ahead and seeing trajectory is not most people's strong point naturally. It takes someone like Lisa to say, look at this, look for these qualities, because it's very helpful. Here's my question on the idea of change. We hear this all the time. That's not the man I married 10 years ago. That's not the woman I married 10 years ago. And my reaction is, well, I hope not. Right? I mean, and so when you talk about getting married young and the dangers, I don't know, that may be too strong a word, but the perils that come with perhaps that, because you are going to change so much. Is there any, better scenario than getting together, committing, which I think is a major issue in our culture today, but committing, and then as you change together, and hopefully, don't allow the drift apart, even as you change. In other words, let's go through this journey together. It's kind of what marriage is saying, as opposed to let's wait until we're far enough down the path that we know we're not going to change too much, but we're not so set in our ways we can't get along. How do we balance that? Because we do change over time. We should change over time. And that can be a good thing or a destructive to a marriage thing.
Absolutely. And this is why I think that the whole concept of soulmates, which is perpetuated even in Christian circles, is pretty bogus.
I hate it.
Okay, because here's what it does. It sets you up for one of two things. Either you're going to be paralyzed because you're afraid that what if this person isn't my soulmate? They may be great. They may, be a person that I enjoy, that I get along with, that I'm attracted to, but then what about this guy, because he has a really good voice? Or what about this girl because she really likes kids? Or she, it's going to give you paralysis by just the sheer volume of choices you have. The opposite end of the spectrum of that, the other end of the problem, is you just pick and marry the first person you meet because they're great and you're super attracted to them. But the minute you hit a bump in the road, maybe this wasn't my soulmate. Maybe I chose wrong. Maybe I need to choose again.
Yep.
And so we see rates of divorce escalating because of that. So that's why I say, Randy, your point's a good one. We have to be committed to being willing to grow. And so while I'm not a big fan of someone going into marriage saying, don't worry, it's cool because I'm going to change him. I'm going to fix him. I'm signing up for a project and I can just, he's malleable. I can make him into who I want him to be. You are going to have to be ready for this person changing. You could probably, anyone watching can think back on their life and think of how their opinions on certain things have changed. Hopefully not on the non-negotiables, hopefully not on the absolutes of scripture, right, but certainly in other areas. And so you have to be willing to explore that together, to be willing to grow and shape one another, and then move forward from that place.
You hit one of my two pet peeves when you talk about relationships, and one is the idea of soulmate. I honestly believe that God doesn't have the one for me. I never thought that. I thought, I could probably marry, half of a dozen different girls, because I think the godly view of it is commitment. It's not finding the one in the needle in the haystack that God pre-planned for you. I honestly believe that it's more about commitment and walking together with God this journey. Is that kind of your view?
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely, I would add to that, Randy, by saying, I think that conservatively, there are going to be 500 to 1,000 people you meet throughout your lifetime that you could, if you were still single, serve God with, love, be attracted to, start a family with. There are so many options out there, because again, when you get to those non-negotiables, they are very few. And from there, where you find the one, here's where I believe in the one. It's when you pick that person, you put the blinders on and you invest in that person and you cultivate that relationship. That person becomes your one. You no longer have the options before you. And that's for many people so freeing, because it's like, I don't have to get into this crazy rat race of like, am I picking the right person anymore? You have your person that you now are privileged to invest in and love and grow together with. And I think it's so great. And to that point, Randy, I want to say too, because many folks, if they're watching and maybe they are single or they have a single young adult or grandchild, don't stress out about that, because I love it when single people can say, you know what? Singleness is not a waiting room for marriage. This isn't for me to just chill and be all about myself and get into selfish pursuits. We are all called to serve others. We're all called to sacrifice. You don't just wait till you're married and then say, oh, life is over. Now I'm locked into this and I need to start, being godly or serving someone here. No, single people are just as called to sacrifice and service. And so the more that you do that on the front end, the better you will be at that in marriage.
Yeah. Last I checked, Jesus was single. Paul was single. Yeah. I think Paul was single. I know there's some debate on it, but point being that, yeah. And that leads right into my second pet peeve when you talk about relationships. And that is what I think of as the Jerry Maguire philosophy. You complete me. I mean, I want to throw up, in my popcorn bucket in the theater on that one, because like, my God, if you are two half people trying to find your other right half match to become whole, you are doomed from the beginning. You got to come in two whole people. That's the beauty of godly marriage, and that two whole, not two halves, two whole become one, as opposed to two halves equal one. Is this still a thing?
It is, and people have bought that hook, line, and sinker because, like me, most people have watched every 1980s rom-com out there where people are miraculously completed by one another and all their problems are solved in 90 minutes. And so, but that's not the real world. And so we have to realize that. And so I always think of it in terms of, Focus on the Family has another great program within the marriage sphere that we call Hope Restored. And it's for folks who might be on the brink of divorce. They are coming, it's really a 4-day program where they come for intensive counseling to sign up for the hope of saving their marriage. Many of them have already filed papers by the time they come. And I had the privilege of going to one of those and sitting in for those 4 days with a group of couples. And it was so cool, Randy. I mean, you start out the first day, and this is exactly what you're saying, how it plays out. You see couple after couple say, well, if he weren't like that, I wouldn't be like this. Mm-hmm. If she didn't do that, it wouldn't make me angry. I wouldn't become this person that I don't want to be. And the blame shifting and the assumptions and the guilt trips and the shame, what we have to realize is that, man, on that final day, Randy, we will stand before the Lord as a person made in the image of God, responsible for ourselves, our decisions, the way we treated others, the way that we loved others. We can't look to our spouse and be like, well, let's talk to them because I'm blaming them. Yeah. That's not going to fly. And so we need to get into that mindset now of realizing that God is the one who's giving us our marching orders. We contribute to a marriage, to any relationship, as someone who is following God alone. And in that, we can turn to the other person. And rather than giving 50% or even less, we're giving 100, even if our partner gives 0.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a question for us married peeps out here. The qualities that you're talking about in the Dating Manifesto that you should look for if you're in the dating world right now. We don't need to forget those once we get married. And I know I'll just point the finger at myself, because there's almost like that conquering aspect that men tend toward, which is got married, took care of that. What do we
check it off the list?
Check it off the list. Yeah. What do we need to know that we need to keep doing? And, I hear people saying, you need to date your wife. And I'm like, part of me is like, I already married her. I mean, what more, but really, what do we need to focus on so that the marriage doesn't wither or become boring? Because these are a lot of the same things you're talking about you're looking for in dating. Yeah.
Well, and let me start that response by giving a comment that I got that's actually quite a sad comment from a single person, a listener to my show. I remember her writing into me and saying, Lisa, I mean, here is why I want to get married. I need to get married someday because then I will know that someone is obligated to love me. Okay, that is the saddest statement anyone could make because, again, they are putting their hope in someone else to fulfill something for them. And so, I mean, married people here are going to collectively cluck their tongues because you know that that's not true. So I think that the fact is you're going to go into a relationship, you're going to get married, and there's not like, I've never been to a wedding where something magical happens and all of a sudden the minute they tie the knot, these people become perfect and they cease to become sinners and they cease to become selfish. So in fact, a good friend of mine once said, Lisa, I never knew how selfish I was until I got married, right. And I never knew how angry I was until I had kids. And so you can take that to the bank. So I think every married couple needs to be they need to study their spouse. They need to get a PhD in their spouse, in learning to love them, in learning to understand what makes them tick. How can they move them closer to Christ? Because that's our ultimate goal for us as individuals and collectively as the body of Christ. What am I doing to champion them in the things that they're passionate about, the things that they're called to? And how are we just having fun? I mean, married people know that, married life is so much about companionship and about just doing life together. And so I think, we need to not treat those things as mundane. We need to be willing to lean in and say, you're my partner now walking through life, and I want to do this with you, while at the same time, and this is where I think a lot of married people forget this or lose this, while at the same time recognizing that you're not my only relationship. So marriage isn't about let's lock it in and shut everyone else out. Right. I mean, guys, I hope you have friends. I hope you have dudes in your life that are pouring into you and challenging you and doing cool things with you that your wife is like, absolutely not. Right. I'm not even going there, doing that. Yep. Ladies, you need people that you can talk to and women that you can share stuff with. And so we've got to diversify and be willing to relate to many, even in marriage.
Turning point in my marriage was the day I realized that I had set too high of expectations on my wife, expected her to be everything to me. And that was just wrong on my part, which led to disappointment. But it was like self-induced. And so, the friends, godly friends that will be, not on your side as the guy in a marriage, but on your side as a married couple, right? I think are critically important. Okay, quick word for anyone who finds themselves dating later in life, maybe widowed, widower, divorced, same things apply. It's a little different situation. It's kind of weird for people at times. Do you have anything they need to hear? Yeah,
I would say the fundamentals still apply. I mean, again, but there's encouragement for folks who are older dating, whether they were married before or not. And that is, God doesn't stop, he doesn't only have stories for 20 somethings. There's hope for you. Even say you were divorced. I've had divorced people tell me, well, Lisa, I'm sure I had my chance. I'm sure, God couldn't give someone else to me. I'm sure that there's not a hopeful story for me. And that's just not true. We know throughout scripture, I mean, my goodness, God is bringing beauty from ashes. Joy comes in the morning. We know that he is a God who's restorer. And so there is hope there. I would say one thing older folks need to do who are pursuing relationships in marriage is really take a much harder look at where they have come from. So again, what I was saying earlier on about accumulating just stuff in life, and that could be some hurts, it could be some wounds, it could be some relational baggage. I am a big fan of straight up getting some professional help if you need that. Yeah. This is where the church community and other friends are great, but sometimes you got to turn to someone who can help you unearth some very real things in your life, in patterns, cycles that need to be broken. And you need to take a look at that. So you need even more so some other people with eyes on your relationship, your intentions, and just be willing to grow from that and be willing to trust God with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Even if you don't think you need counseling, you probably need counseling. I'm just saying it helps. It's
proactive counseling, man. I think that's a benefit to anyone.
Truly, counseling is not a dirty word, and I think fortunately the culture's more and more accepting of that. Unlike when I was younger, where if you went to counseling, it's because something was wrong. No,
right?
Okay, we have barely scratched the surface, you guys watching, and there's so much more. And so before I let you go, Lisa, I need you to tell me a little bit about this website, boundless.org, and the Boundless Show, what people that are in this world right now can follow up here and continue down this, strengthening their expectations and themselves so that they can have a better marriage.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, boundless.org, as you mentioned earlier, Randy, we're the young adult ministry of Focus on the Family, which many people are familiar with. But our goal is to really help the college through 30-somethings, most of whom are single, navigate life, grow into adulthood in the areas of faith, relationships, dating, marriage prep, as well as career, finances, just the millennial and Gen Z generations primarily. And how do we do this really with maturity and with an eye towards glorifying God in everything that we do? And so the neat thing about it is we're not just, we publish articles, we have a group blog, we have the weekly show, all of our social media, but we see ourselves as a community for those who just need that encouragement, need some resources and advice. We hear from our audience all the time, so it's a great place to be seen and heard. But I always like to say with the caveat of this, we're not your church. I encourage every person out there to get into a local church and get someone up in their grill who's going to know their business and be able to encourage them and who they conversely can serve and encourage as well. But Boundless is here for you with an arm around the shoulder for those who are walking through this season of life.
Wonderful. And I second that. The internet is a great tool, but it does not replace real life and real relationships, face-to-face, person-to-person.
Absolutely.
So, Lisa, thank you. This has been good. Maybe I should talk about dating a little more. I don't know. We'll see what the audience thinks if it's helpful for them. But no, these are real good truths that we need to hear. And if you're married, you need to hear them again because it's a daily thing. And I'm at the point where we're empty nesters now. Like I said, 31 years of marriage, and I can honestly say that working through the difficult times pays off dividends down the road, and it can be a real blessing. And I'm blessed, and I want you to be blessed too out there. Lisa, again, thank you. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your expertise.
Thanks so much, Randy.
All right, you guys, have a good weekend. Come back. We got more great interviews, and don't neglect this. If this hits you, then go check out Lisa's book. Check out boundless.org and set yourself up for success because that's God's plan. We'll see you again next week here on Life Today Live.
I want to know this book. It's the only book he ever wrote. You need to know the Word of God. You need to know what God's book says. This is God's Word, brother. It's food, spiritual.